The Young Justice cartoon is kind of a mess, and yet I still love it. Way back when, in something like 2014 or 2013, I watched the first season of Young Justice. Then I watched up until I think the third episode of the second season before I dropped it. I decided recently, mostly on a whim, to go back and watch it again, and quite quickly watched all three seasons that are currently available. And I have some, thoughts. Some petty, others less so. Also, for some context, I'm not very into the world of comics. I've read a couple issues of the Young Justice series that started in 1999 and enjoyed them, and I know some other stuff by cultural osmosis. But most of my contact with DC has been movies and TV shows, which doesn't directly have anything to do with what I'm going to say here, but it is relevant to the first point. Namely, who is this man, and what did he do to Connor Kent? Setting aside the fact that this is, and always has been, a weak design in comparison to the 90s and Rebirth Connor designs, they nerfed him. They nerfed my boy. How dare they? He can't even fly!
Superman can fly. Why can't I fly?
Which leads me further on to my second point. The series' longest running couple, McGann and Connor, Miss Martian and Superboy, respectively the niece of the Martian Manhunter, who is secretly actually a white Martian, and a clone created with Superman's and Lex Luthor's combined DNA, are a goddamn fiasco. They were fine-ish in season 1, kind of cute, even, in that cliché teen rom-com sort of way. I wasn't super fond of McGann being the one to give Connor his name, but I wasn't overly upset with it at first, until we learned that she named him after the boyfriend of the main character of Hello Megan, the TV show she has essentially modeled her entire life on Earth after. After that, it became less I'm trans and very into characters forging their own identities and naming themselves, and more, oh no, oh that is definitely a red flag. But then came season 2, and they're suddenly broken up, because McGann's been brain blasting their enemies into catatonia, basically, and Connor wasn't cool with that. And when he tried to confront her about it, she tried to alter his memories to make him forget he was ever upset with her. Which I would say is less of a red flag and more of a foghorn screaming, "Get out!" Which, to be fair, Connor did. But they then spent the entire season being angsty about each other instead. And starting in season 3, they're engaged, which I was willing to give a go, I really was. McGann genuinely saw the error of her ways in season 2, she's worked to fix things, and if Connor wants her back, fine, that's fine. I'll see where this goes. Except then they spend the entirety of season 3 just having relationship problems to the point where they almost end their engagement because McGann was lying to Connor about how the teams were all working together. And Connor basically didn't have a story outside of his relationship with her, and I swear to God, if this pattern continues into season 4, I am going to scream. To move us on into slightly less petty territory, I now have to move on to Lex Luthor. Specifically, Season 3's Lex Luthor. Because Season 3, which came out in January of 2019, did what so many shows have done, which really stopped being funny and started being exhausting like 2 days into 2016. They made him into an incredibly transparent parody of Donald Trump. Because he's the UN Secretary General now, so what else are they going to do with him other than go the cheapest, most obvious route they possibly could? He actually says sad and makes a comment about fine people on both sides. He says he put his company in a blind trust, but his sister is now running it. He holds a conference in a country that has a lot of his hotels. That's the level of completely not subtle in the least we're talking about here. It's incredibly tired, not funny, and honestly exhausting. And if I'm being honest, it's an insult to Lex Luthor. Normally, I wouldn't care about that because Lex Luthor can go rot. He is a horrible man and I do not care for him, but this is a bit much, even for me.
An explosion, massive property damage. Sad.
And aside from that, it just also would not happen. Lex Luthor could not, in any universe, become the Secretary General of the United Nations. Which I know he became at the end of season 2, so before the Trump presidency, but that doesn't actually make it any more believable. You wanna know why? Well, first off, the UN Secretary General is not chosen by some worldwide vote. Us common folk have absolutely nothing to do with it. So anything in the way of how Donald Trump got elected is a complete non-starter. To have become a candidate, he'd have to have received the votes of at least 9 members of the United Nations Security Council, with no veto votes from the permanent 5 members, and then be appointed by the United Nations General Assembly. Furthermore, the candidate is almost always from a middle power and someone with little prior fame, making someone like Lex Luthor utterly unthinkable, even before you consider that he is not, in fact, a politician. And then there's the fact that Lex is an American citizen and the US is one of the permanent 5. Granted, it's only president and not an actual rule, but it's generally agreed upon that the UN Secretary General cannot be from any of the permanent members of the Security Council because it would put too much power in that country's hands. So it just wouldn't happen. If the Light wanted one of their players as the Secretary General, they should have maneuvered a pawn into the role. Someone much more believable than Lex Luthor. They could have even kept their meddling secret from the League if they did that. Which actually brings me on to the Light itself. I don't like them. I mean, in general, I don't care for what they're doing, but also as a villain, the Light is frustrating. They're this ominous council of 7 operating among the villains of the world, controlling everything from behind the scenes, and it's honestly getting exhausting at this point. Listen, I get the concept of raising the stakes as the seasons progress, but with villains like this, you run a very real risk of making your heroes' actions feel ultimately pointless. The heroes have won battles against the Light over and over again, but they feel further away from victory than ever. Every goddamn time they seem to have gained even an inch, we get yet another scene of a council meeting with Vandal Savage smugly congratulating himself over how it's all going according to plan or how they can still bounce back and everything's still on track. It's been going for 3 seasons straight at this point. It's not fun anymore. I mean, to be fair, it wasn't ever really to my taste to begin with, but at this point, it's just getting old. You have to give your audience a moment to breathe. Let them have one victory that doesn't feel ultimately hollow. At least Season 3 gave us something new with a schism between the villains, with Vandal working to stop the anti-life equation and Darkseid working to unlock it. But that actually exacerbates the problem because the heroes wouldn't have been able to put a stop to this if Vandal hadn't been after the same thing they were, and at this point all of this is just serving to make the Light seem omniscient enough to rival God. And yes, I'm aware that the Light and the Reach weren't exactly friends, but I mean an actual schism within the Light itself, with the new member Granny Goodness working for Darkseid and Vandal against them. But speaking of the anti-life equation, that brings me to Halo, aka Violet Harper. She's a new addition to the cast in Season 3, and I will be talking more about her outside of this video, but for now, what you need to know is that we're introduced to her as a Muslim refugee from Karak, a country which has been forcibly annexed by its neighbor Bialia to form the country of Greater Bialia. And it's revealed that before we properly meet her, she, as Gabrielle Dow, before she became Violet Harper, took a bribe to let people into the royal palace of Markovia. Those people turned out to be assassins after the king and queen, and Violet says she thinks she didn't know what she was doing, but obviously still feels terrible. We first meet her properly when she's waking up in a grave about to be buried alive, and Artemis saves her. After that, it becomes quickly apparent that she's lost her memory and cannot die. Now, I'm not super well versed in this topic, but I do know enough to know that how they handled her character was, far from ideal. In her first ever fight, she gets grabbed by the head, her hijab is burned off, and when she heals, no one offers her anything to cover up with. Very soon after, it's revealed that she is sleeping on the couch of the Harper Wen Kroc family home in full view of Will Harper. She couldn't, like, bunk with Artemis or something if they didn't have a guest room available. Also, there's another scene where a mother figure to Violet wants to brush her hair and asks Victor Stone to leave, except he doesn't. He just walks to the other side of the room to get a glass of water and averts his eyes because he has to overhear their conversation for plot reasons. Also, her hero costume is the usual skin-tight superhero fare. While she's still missing her memory, she gets the name Violet from her romantic interest for the season, Brion Markov, the Prince of Markovia. When she learns that her name before was Gabrielle Dow, she rejects that and now goes by Violet Harper instead. At first, this is not so alarming. She's been through a major change. Of course, her identity might be a little bit shaken up by that. Except no, she continues to reject Gabrielle and set herself apart as definitely not her, up to the point where the series makes possibly its biggest misstep with her. She proclaims that she is not Muslim right before taking a drink. The route the series seems to have decided they're going with her is that she's just a mother box, a kind of sapient alien computer, whose soul got trapped in the body of a dead Muslim girl she was trying to revive, and therefore now has human emotions and some of that girl's memories. Except she still wears her hijab because it feels right, so I don't really know what to think here. Is she Gabrielle or not? Because a mother box certainly wouldn't have any feelings about a hijab. That has to belong to Gabrielle. Victor, who became cyborg because he was fused with a father box to save his life, got to keep his identity, even though for a while Violet had to keep cleansing him of the father box's influence. Why isn't Violet allowed to still be Muslim? She doesn't even have to be Gabrielle as she was. She can be a new person, a fusion, if you will. But why this? Why go out of their way to make her say she's not Muslim after presenting her in a fashion that would make literally any person think, oh hey cool, some positive Muslim representation? I can only hope that this wasn't something she actually believed and just an angst-fueled, guilt-ridden attempt to distance herself from what Gabrielle did. Of course, at the moment, there's no canon indication that that's the case. In general, Season 3 feels very scattered, for lack of a better term. In Season 1, the main through lines were mostly focused on the internal conflict of the team, and dealing with whatever plans the Light cooked up that week. By the end of the season, they'd got all their secrets out, and did not deal with the Light, but I already went over that. In Season 2, the main focus was on the Reach, with some few jumps over to check on how the Justice League were faring in their trial in space, and a little bit of the Light's plotting sprinkled in for flavor. In Season 3, there's the Markovian refugee crisis and the rising anti-meta sentiment, and also anti-Karaki sentiment. There's the Outsiders and the Metahuman Youth Center, there's the schism within the Light and Granny Goodness's evil metahuman tracking VR/AR headset. Yes, really. There's the mystery of what Halo's deal is, and Darkseid and the anti-life equation. There's the Justice League going on missions in space, there's metahuman trafficking also in space, there's Lex Luthor as the Secretary General of the United Nations, forming his own team of meta-teens to try and one-up the Outsiders, and then there was that weird thing with McGann's brother trying to foster conflict between the New Gods and the Bug people. Not to mention, for the entire season, they seem to be trying to push Will and Artemis as a couple, which literally nobody wanted or asked for, but thank goodness that at least proved to be nothing in the end. Sure, it all kind of ties together, but it's too much. If you asked me what the plot of Season 1 or 2 was, I could probably tell you without much trouble. If you asked me about Season 3, I'd have to start dragging out the red string and corkboards. Once again, you gotta let your audience breathe, man. And that's all I have to say for now. I have more to talk about in regards to this series, but those videos are gonna be on broader topics, and this is already pretty long, so I think we're gonna leave it here. Thanks for watching this video. If you liked it, consider liking it and maybe subscribing. I will be back here Thursday after next. Bye!